Now we're going to take a look at creating sites and subnets in Windows Server 2008 Active Directory. So first of all, I'm going to go into Start, Programs, Admin Tools, and I'm opening up Active Directory Sites and Services here. Now this is just the default container. Let's take a look at some of the features here. So first of all, we can see subnets, and you can see I don't have any additional subnets. So obviously if you've got a head office and a number of branch offices, you probably want to have the branch offices on separate physical subnets. As long as you have got your routing tables configured so that each router knows where each physical site is, you can then come in and create that logically in Active Directory here. You can also configure inter-site transports, and by default it supports 2. So IP, of course, is just using the remote procedure call, and also you've got the SMTP connector here. Now, when you first install Active Directory, it just creates a single site, and it's called default first site. And default first site, of course, you can rename it if you wish, so HQ site. But if I try and put in a space, you can see that you do get an error message here that essentially says you're not allowed to have any kind of these illegal characters. So just kind of bear that in mind. So again, HQ. So within my site at the moment, I'll just flip between these two servers. I've got 2 servers at the moment. So I've got Active Directory. So if I just go into, this is my server 2 machine, and you can see that it tells me that here. And if I go into Active Directory here, Active Directory users and computers, you can actually see that if I go into domain controllers, sure enough, I've actually got 2 domain controllers here. So ST1 and SRV2 here. So these are my 2 domain controllers. And of course, by default, they're both global catalog servers. Let's go back to my Sterling 1 server here. So in Sterling 1, I can see, as I said, I've got essentially 2 servers. So whereas Active Directory users and computers, that really talks about the logical aspects of Active Directory. Whereas here in Active Directory sites and services, we're really concentrating on the physical aspects. So again, what we might find here is, first of all, you've got a number of kind of properties sheets, if you will. So if, for example, if I go into the properties of my server, you can see here it's saying, okay, do you want to replicate it? And at the moment, it's just saying that it's replicating it with both IP and SMTP. And of course, it's doing that purely because we have just a single site at the moment. Again, you've got the Object tab here. So just like Active Directory users and computers, if you create an organizational unit, this is quite good because it protects the object from accidental deletion. And in the physical sense, that can be a very useful feature. So one of the things that you might want to do is you might want to go into subnets. So let's say, for example, we've got a new subnet. So I can say, okay, let's create a new subnet. What do you want to call this? And you can see I can either do it in an IPv4 based address or an IPv6 based address. So we can call this anything that you want. Now at the moment, we've only got 1 site here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close that out. And we're actually going to go ahead and create a new site. So I can right click here and choose to create a site. So we'll call this my UK site. And in my UK site, I've only got 1 default site link at the moment. So I'll just go ahead and accept that. Now, as soon as I create the site, you get this message and it says, okay, you've gone ahead and created the site, but I essentially don't know where that site is located. So again, a couple of things that you need to do is you need to add a subnet for the site, and also you need to make sure that you've got a DNS server infrastructure and also an Active Directory domain controller in there as well. So I'm going to click OK. So now if I go back to my subnets and go ahead and create, let's say, new and subnet. So let's put in the IP address of our subnet that we want to use. So again, I'll just use the 192. Let's say 100.21.1. And again, you'll notice here now that it's also asking for a subnet mask as well. So let me just put in, that's the network ID. And we'll just say a subnet mask of, let's say, 24. That would be 255.255.255. So now I can then say, right, I want it to be associated with the UK site. And again, I can now click OK. So there you have it. You can now see that I've now associated a subnet with that UK site. Now, going into the UK site, of course, you can see that I don't have any servers here. So again, what I'm going to do just for demo purposes, I can obviously take SRv2 and I can essentially just drag and drop it into this site. You can see, okay, be careful when you move the object here. It could obviously not work correctly. But again, this is just purely for demonstration purposes. So now that I've got my server 2 in place, other things that you probably want to configure, I can right click here and now you've got some options to replicate. Now, of course, depending on the site link that you've created, so if I double click that link again, at the moment, I'm just using the IP. Now, the other thing that I want to just draw your attention to, if I go into the inter-site transports here, you can actually see those site links. Okay, so essentially I've got a default IP link and the SMTP link, again, is easy to create. So new site link. So again, I'm going to link these two sites. I'll call this my second link and click OK. So you can now see I've got this SMTP link. And if I double click on this, now I've got a couple of options. First of all, you've got something called the schedule. So how often do you actually want it to replicate? I can actually go and replicate every 180 minutes or every 3 hours in this case, all day. But again, you may only want this to replicate over a certain period of time. So again, I can specify, let's say, replication is not available in the evening, for example, or replication is available. So within that scope of time, you can then choose to replicate every 3 hours, every 2 hours, and so on. What we've also got here is the cost value. So the lower the cost value, the better the chance of the replication taking place. So, for example, if you've got two links and I've got an IP link, I would maybe set a cost value of 20. And I might have an SMTP link at a cost value of 100. So that means that if the IP link fails, it will then use the SMTP link. And essentially, that's how it works. So there you have it, creating sites and subnets in Active Directory Windows Server 2008.